Hey guys, tonight we are going to travel back to a time of firelight and frost to explore the quiet, potent magic woven by Viking women into ordinary cloth. Picture a world lit only by a flickering hearth and the low, silver light of a northern sun. Smoke hangs in the air, thick with the scent of pine, boiled wool, and roasting meat. It's a world of profound beauty and brutal hardship. And let's be honest, with our modern immune systems and general aversion to eating fermented fish for breakfast, you probably wouldn't survive the first winter. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. As always, I love seeing where you're all listening from, so drop your city and the time in the comments below. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your journey begins not on a dragon-proud ship, but on the damp, earthen floor of a longhouse. The air grows heavy as you step away from the central fire pit, your eyes struggling to adjust to the deep shadows that cling to the far wall. The sounds of the household fade behind you, the crackle of the flames, the low murmur of conversation replaced by a profound, humming quiet. And there it is. It doesn't look like much at first, just two massive wooden uprights leaning against the wall at a slight angle. It's taller than you are, a looming skeleton of timber in the gloom, a structure known as a warp-weighted loom. This was the standard weaving technology for much of ancient Europe, and in Viking Age Scandinavia, it was an essential part of every home of any standing. Hundreds of threads, the warp, hang down from a top beam, each one tied to a smooth, heavy stone near the floor. These loom weights, often made of baked clay or soapstone, pull the threads taut, creating a vast vertical harp of yarn that waits to be played. The longer you stare, the more this object seems to breathe. This is not just a piece of furniture or a tool for making clothes. It's an altar. The stones at the bottom, pulled from a riverbed or a sacred field, feel ancient and cold to the touch. The wooden frame, polished smooth by generations of hands, seems to hold memories in its grain. Historians still argue whether the magical practices associated with weaving were a widespread, formalized system or simply a collection of local folk beliefs. Was every woman a weaver of spells, or only a select few? It is like asking if everyone who posts a picture of their sourdough starter is a professional baker, or just trying to hop on a trend. This loom stands in the darkest, coldest part of the house, away from the warmth and the light. It's a quirky but practical placement, keeping the delicate wool threads from drying out, but it also feels intentional, as if the work done here is a secret. This is a craft that thrives in the quiet, away from the boisterous clamor of the main hall. It's less Valhalla, I am coming, and more, I really hope I don't get a splinter. The air around the loom feels different charged, waiting. The threads hang in perfect silence, a blank page of destiny. Your training doesn't begin with a sword or a shield. It begins here with a handful of wool and the humming silence of this colossal wooden beast. Before those threads can hang in the darkness, you must create them. Your journey moves from the smoky interior of the longhouse out into the biting, clean air of the farmstead. The magic doesn't begin with a chant or a rune. It begins with the sheep. You approach the flock, a moving, bleeding carpet of off-white and charcoal gray. They are a hardy, ancient breed, their wool a double coat of soft, insulating inner layer called fell, and a long, coarse, water-resistant outer layer called tog. This practical duality is a historical fact, giving Viking Age textiles their famous resilience. But you see it as something more. It's a physical manifestation of a hidden and a revealed world, a soft interior truth and a tough exterior face. You choose your sheep with care. Not just any wool will do for a sail that must battle the northern gales, nor for a bride's gown that must promise fertility. You select a strong, placid Awe, murmuring your intentions into her thick fleece as you work the iron shears. The blades are clumsy by modern standards, but effective. With each clip, you feel the grease of the lanolin on your hands, a waxy, protective substance that smells richly of animal and earth. This isn't a chore. It's a harvest. You are gathering not just fiber, but the essence of the creature's resilience, its warmth, its life. The alternative to wool lies in the fields, under the wide, pale sky. Here, vast swaths of flax ripple in the breeze, their flowers a shock of delicate blue. When the stalks are ready, you don't cut them. You and the other women pull them from the earth by the handful, roots and all, to preserve the full length of the fibers. Then comes the less romantic part, retting. The stalks are submerged in a stagnant pond or laid out in a dewy field to rot. The stench is formidable, a detail often omitted from idyllic paintings of country life. It's the smell of decay, of transformation. After weeks of this controlled rot, you beat the dried stalks with a wooden mallet. A rhythmic thwack-thwack-thwack breaks the woody core away, revealing the pale, hair-like fibers of linen within. Whether it's wool or flax, the next step is the same. You sit with a bundle of cleaned fibers, a drop spindle in your hand. This simple tool awaited stick whirs, and dances as you feed the fibers to it, your fingers expertly teasing and twisting them into a continuous, strong thread. This is where the first layer of true magic is laid. The repetitive motion is a meditation. With every twist of the spindle, you are twisting your will, your hopes, your protective charms, into the very structure of the yarn. Scholars debate whether the meticulous preparation of different fibers was purely for practical quality control, or if it represented a deeper, ritualistic choice from the very beginning. But as you spin, you're not just thinking about tensile strength. You are thinking about the child this blanket will warm, the warrior this tunic will protect. The finished ball of yarn in your lap feels heavier than its physical weight. It is now a vessel, humming with a quiet power, ready for the loom that waits in the shadows. You hold the finished balls of yarn in a basket, the wool still smelling faintly of sheep and the linen of earth and water. They feel solid, real. But the woman who approaches you now moves with an aura that seems to blur the edges of the world. She is the völva, the local wise woman, a seeress. She isn't the crone of fairy tales, bent and wicked, but she carries the weight of her years in the timbre of her voice and the unsettling wisdom in her eyes. Her hands, gnarled from a lifetime of work, are surprisingly gentle as she takes a ball of your freshly spun yarn. She doesn't inspect its quality. She seems to be listening to it. "You have spun your intention well," she says, her voice a low hum that seems to resonate with the loom across the room. But spinning is only drawing the water. Weaving is making it rain. She pulls a single thread from the ball, holding it taut between her fingers. This is a life, a day, a choice. Alone, it is fragile. Then she tells you about Seidr. This is the proper name for the magic she practices, a powerful and mysterious art focused on divination and the influencing of minds and events. Historically, Seidr was primarily the domain of women, while the great god Odin was a master of it. For mortal men to engage in its practices was often seen as shameful or unmanly, a sign of weakness. For women, however, it was a source of immense, if sometimes feared, authority. The völva explains that what you will do at the loom is a form of Seidr. "We do not create the world," she murmurs, her gaze fixed on the threads hanging in the shadows. "The great loom is already strong. The Norns, the fates, have already warped it with the great destinies of gods and men. That is Grog, that which is laid down." She gestures to the vertical threads on the loom. "But the weft," she says, tapping the ball of yarn in her hand, "the weft is ours. We cross the threads. We choose the color. We make the pattern. We cannot stop the great weaving, but we can add our own small threads to the design." It's a bit like trying to influence the outcome of a reality TV show By voting, you can change the contestants, but you can try to nudge the result. She speaks of how the physical act of weaving mirrors the magical act of shaping fate. The back and forth motion of the shuttle, the rhythmic thumping of the sword beater to pack the threads, the quiet chanting under your breath, it is all a ritual. It is a dance with destiny. This concept of life as a thread wasn't exclusive to the Norse. The Greeks had their fates, the Moirai, who did the same thing. It is a quirky but deeply human tidbit that so many ancient cultures looked at the chaos of existence and decided it must be organized by some cosmic knitting circle. Historians still argue whether the völva was a revered spiritual leader in her community or a feared outcast living on the fringes. The truth, you suspect, is that she was both, depending on whether you needed a blessing or a curse. The völva places the yarn back in your hands. It feels heavier now, charged with a new, profound significance. You are not just making cloth. You are learning to manipulate the very fabric of reality. The völva gestures from the grand structure of the loom to the collection of implements resting on a nearby stool. A warrior has her sword and shield, she says, her voice low and steady. A weaver has these. They are not wood and bone. They are your voice, your hands, your will, given form. She picks up a smooth, boat-shaped piece of wood, pointed at both ends, with a hollow in the middle for a small bobbin of your spun yarn. This is the shuttle. She places it in your palm. It's surprisingly light, carved from a single piece of yew and polished to a soft sheen by countless hours of use. It feels warm, alive. It's the Viking equivalent of a favorite pen, perfectly balanced, familiar, an extension of your own thoughts. This is your messenger, the völva explains. It carries your thread, your decision, across the expanse of what is already determined. She shows you how it will dart through the opening in the vertical warp threads, a fleeting fish in a sea of strings. Next, she directs your attention to a long, slender rod of ashwood. This is a heddle rod. Attached to it are dozens of string loops, and each loop is threaded around every second warp thread. When you pull this rod forward, it lifts half of the warp, creating a gap, a momentary tunnel through the wall of yarn. This, she says, tapping the heddle rod, is how you create a space for your messenger. This is opening the moment. Without this, there is no path, no possibility for change. You are simply looking at a wall of fate. With this, you invite yourself in. Finally, she hands you the most formidable of the tools. It's long, flat, and heavy, shaped like a short sword, but with a blunt edge. This is the sword beater or weft beater, and this one is crafted not from wood, but from the polished, dense bone of a whale. Archaeologists have found these beaters in the graves of high-status women, often intricately carved, indicating they were deeply personal and prized possessions. And this, the völva says, her voice dropping, is your conviction. After you pass the shuttle through the gap, you will use this heavy beater to slam the new thread upwards, packing it tight against the woven cloth above. The sound is a satisfying, solid thump. This locks your choice into the fabric. It makes your whispered song a permanent line in the story. It is the act of saying, so be it. You run your thumb along the cool surface of the whalebone. There are faint lines scratched into it, patterns that are not just for decoration. They are meant to be felt, not just seen. These tools are not interchangeable parts from a kit. They are imbued with the spirit of their owner. A quirky but common practice was to feed the tools with a drop of mead or milk to keep their spirit cooperative. Archaeologists still debate whether the placement of specific tools in graves was a purely practical consideration for the afterlife or a deeply symbolic act, burying a woman with the very extensions of her soul. Holding them now, you feel the distinction is meaningless. The shuttle, the heddle, the beater, they are waiting for you. They are extensions of your body, ready to help you speak in a language of fiber and fate. We begin with a lie, the völva says, a mischievous glint in her eye. Your brow furrows. You expected a sacred pattern, a complex series of knots, perhaps a runic symbol to start. Instead, she guides you to the loom and gestures for you to take your place. The sheer scale of it is intimidating. The top of the woven cloth is at eye level, and the unwoven warp threads hang down past your waist, each tethered to its smooth, heavy stone. The völva directs you to take the heddle rod, the one that controls every second thread. You pull it forward, and a gap, the shed, opens in the curtain of yarn. It feels like parting the veil of reality. "Now, your messenger," she whispers. You take the shuttle, your hand slightly clumsy, and pass it through the shed from right to left. The little wooden boat sails smoothly through the tunnel of threads, leaving a single line of your yarn in its wake. Then you release the heddle rod, and the gap closes. The warp threads return to a flat plane. Now, your conviction. You take the heavy sword beater, and, with a solid thump, you slam the new weft thread upwards, packing it tight against the row before it. It's a strangely satisfying feeling of finality. This simple over-under pattern is called a tabby weave or plain weave. It is the most basic, fundamental structure of weaving, used for everything from simple tunics to rough sacks. On the surface, it is unremarkable, the prose of the textile world. You have woven a line, the völva says. Now push the heddle rod back against the loom. You do so, and a different set of threads moves forward, the ones that were previously in the back. A new shed opens. Send the messenger back. You pass the shuttle from left to right. THUMP. You beat it into place. You've now created the simplest possible fabric. But the völva leans closer, her voice a conspiratorial whisper. Everyone knows this weave. It is honest. It is strong. So, this is where we will hide our first secret. She guides your hand to one of the hanging loom weights, one that holds a thread near the edge of the fabric. Untie it. You do. The thread goes slack. Now, take the shuttle, but pass it over this loose thread, not under it with the others. You follow her instructions. The shuttle sails across, but this time it leaves the one slack thread untouched on the surface. You beat the row, retie the weight, and continue the normal tabby weave for several more rows. The result is a single, almost invisible flaw. A float where one thread has skipped its proper place in the weave. To anyone else, it's a mistake. A moment of lost tension, a rookie error. To you and the völva, it is a mark, a hidden signature, a tiny, deliberate lie in a field of truth. Historians still argue about the meaning of so-called weaving faults in archaeological textile fragments. Are they simple mistakes, or were they intentional markers, a kind of secret language? This tiny act reveals the core of this magic system. It isn't always about bold, obvious symbols. Often, it's about subtle manipulations that are hidden in plain sight. It's like hiding a secret message in a text by using a slightly different emoji. No one else notices, but the intended recipient knows. You've just woven your first secret, a lie that only the threads will remember. The cloth you've woven so far is the color of the sheep it came from, a creamy, natural white. It is honest and pure, but the völva tells you that to weave with power, you must speak with color. The earth gives us more than fiber, she says, leading you out of the longhouse, a basket in her hand. It gives us its voice. Your next lesson is in the language of dyes, a messy, smelly, and utterly transformative art. You leave the farmstead behind and head for the wilder places, the overgrown verges of the forest and the marshy banks of a slow-moving river. Your first quarry is for blue. The völva shows you a leafy, unassuming plant growing in a cultivated patch. This is woad. Its leaves, she explains, hold the secret of the sky. The process she describes is less than glamorous. The leaves must be harvested, crushed, and fermented often with stale urine, as the ammonia is crucial for the chemical reaction. Yes, you read that right. Creating the color of kings and the heavens required a substance most people were keen to get rid of. It has a quirky tidbit of dye history that puts a new perspective on the term royal blue. You help her gather the leaves, trying not to think too hard about the next step. The blue, she explains, is for wisdom, for protection on the sea, for communicating with the gods of the air. Next, you search for red. This time, she leads you to a patch of scraggly-looking weeds, their roots clinging stubbornly to the soil. She uses a small, sharp stick to dig them up, revealing a tangle of reddish-brown roots. Madder, she says, dusting the dirt from them. The color of blood, of life, of passion, of a warrior's strength. Boiling these roots will create a vibrant, powerful red dye. Historically, madder was one of the most important red dyes across the ancient world, its use documented from Egypt to Rome to the Viking lands. It was a cornerstone of the dyer's craft, a reliable and potent source of color. Finally, you scramble up a rocky outcrop where ancient oaks are bearded with feathery lichen. The völva gathers it gently, explaining its unique properties. "This is different," she murmurs. Woad and madder shout. Lichen whispers. Certain lichens, when slowly simmered, release a stunning array of colors, from rich purples to earthy browns and sunny yellows. The color can change depending on the type of lichen, the pot it's boiled in, and even the time of year it's harvested. This, she says, is the color of the land itself, the spirit of the place. It's a magic that is subtle, local, and deeply connected to the earth. She tells you yellow is for happiness and success, while the rare purple is for royalty and hidden knowledge. Back at the longhouse, you stand over the steaming, pungent dye pots. The smell is potent. It's a mix of boiling plants, ammonia, and something vaguely metallic. The völva makes you dip your skeins of spun yarn into the cauldrons. Watching the pale wool transform, drinking in the color until it is saturated, feels like alchemy. You are not just changing its appearance. You are imbuing it with a specific power, a clear voice. Historians still argue how much of the color choice in Viking textiles was driven by symbolic meaning versus the simple availability and cost of the dyestuffs. But as you pull a skein of deep crimson yarn from the madder pot, dripping like a living thing, you know it's not just red. It's courage. It's life. It's a word you can weave. Your hands are now stained with the ghost of every color you've made, a faint blue under your fingernails, a brownish red on your cuticles. You have your palette of enchanted threads. Now the völva tells you it is time to give them a voice. The loom has a rhythm, she says, standing beside the massive frame. It is a drumbeat. It is a heartbeat. You must give it a song. This is your introduction to Galdr, the practice of chanting or singing spells. It is a different branch of magic from seer, more direct, more focused on the power of spoken words and incantations to achieve a specific result. She instructs you to begin a simple weave with the deep blue yarn you dyed with woad. As you pull the heddle rod forward, creating the shed, you are to inhale. As you pass the shuttle through, you are to begin the chant. As you beat the weft into place with the heavy sword beater thump, you are to end the phrase. The sound of the loom becomes the percussion for your spell. Your first Galdr is simple, a song for clarity and wisdom. The words are ancient, alliterative, and deeply resonant. You feel them vibrate in your chest, the sound filling the quiet space around the loom. Woad thread woven, wisdom wound, sky sight sought, and insight found. Thump, mind be clear, and thought be true, in this cloth of deepest blue. Thump, the repetition is hypnotic. The back and forth motion of your body, the hum of the threads, the rhythmic beat of the sword, and the drone of your own voice all begin to merge into a single focused ritual. You lose track of time. The world outside the loom fades away. There is only the growing band of blue cloth, the thread, and the sound. The völva explains that the song must match the intention. For the red yarn, the galder would be louder, more martial, a song of strength and blood. For the yellow, a lilting, joyful tune for luck and prosperity. It's not so different from how we use music today, a specific playlist for working out, another for studying, another for a romantic dinner. We are, in a way, still practicing a form of galder, charging our activities with the energy of sound. A quirky but fascinating tidbit is that some scholars believe the complex metrical forms of Old Norse poetry, with their strict rules of alliteration and stress, may have evolved partly from the rhythms of work chants like these. The very structure of their epic poems might have its roots in the thump-thump-thump of the loom or the forge. You feel the magic taking hold, not as a sudden jolt of power, but as a slow, deep saturation. The cloth you are weaving is drinking in the song, just as the yarn drank in the dye. The vibrations of your voice are being physically trapped within the interlocking fibers. Historians still debate whether galder was considered a prayer to a deity or a direct manipulation of cosmic forces through acoustics. Was the weaver asking a god to bless the cloth, or was she commanding the cloth to be blessed? As you continue your chant, the distinction feels irrelevant. The song and the thread are becoming one and the same. The cloth is not just blue. It now hums with the memory of your voice. The time for practice is over. A young man from the village is preparing for his first raiding season, and his mother has come to the völva, her face tight with worry. She wants a varnarfelder, a protection cloak. The völva looks at you. This will be your first true working. You are to weave a cloak that can turn blades, or at least confuse the eye of an enemy enough to make a blade miss its mark. This isn't just about making a warm garment. It's about weaving a shield. You begin with a selection of materials, a ritual in itself. You choose the tog, the tough, long, water-resistant outer wool from a ram known for its aggressive, dominant nature. Its spirit, you hope, will lend the cloak a defiant quality. You dye the yarn in a mix of madder red for a warrior's spirit and walnut husks for a deep earthy brown that will help the wearer blend into the shadows of a forest or the grime of a shield wall. The colors of blood and soil. As you warp the loom, you sing a low martial galder, the one you are taught for the red threads, your voice steady and fierce. The very foundation of the cloak is built on a song of strength. The völva shows you a new pattern. It's a variation of a twill weave, creating diagonal lines in the fabric. This weave is denser, thicker, and more durable than the simple tabiao, historical fact that made twill the go-to for hard-wearing garments like cloaks and trousers. But she explains the magical significance. The straight line is the path of the spear, she says. The diagonal line is the path that slips away. It confuses the eye. It deflects. It does not meet the blow head-on. It guides it aside. It's a subtle but powerful concept. You are not creating an impenetrable wall, but a surface of misdirection. Into this twill, you must weave specific symbols. The most important is the voknut, the knot of the slain, a symbol of 3 interlocking triangles heavily associated with Odin. Its true meaning is lost to time, but it's often interpreted as a mark dedicating the wearer to the god of war, ensuring that if they fall, they will be taken to Valhalla. Weaving it is a grim but necessary blessing. You also weave the Alges rune, the rune of protection, its shape like a splayed hand or the antlers of an elk, meant to ward off evil. These symbols are not woven to be obvious blocks of color. You create them subtly, using a slightly different shade of brown, so they are almost invisible unless the light catches them just right. This is a common technique in surviving textile fragments, a practice known as hidden weaving. A quirky fringe belief is that some protection cloaks had a single mistake thread woven into the hem, often of a completely different material or color. The idea was that an enemy's curse, seeking the wearer, would be drawn to the imperfection in the cloak and expend its energy there, harmlessly. It's like a magical lightning rod. Historians still argue about the real-world efficacy of such garments. Were they pure superstition, or did the belief in their power give the wearer a psychological edge, boost of confidence that made them a more effective fighter? As you weave, you picture the young man. You pour all your focus, all your intent for his safety, into every pass of the shuttle, every thump of the beater. You are not just making a cloak. You are building a fortress of fiber and faith, a wearable prayer against the cold steel of the world. As you work on the protection cloak, its diagonal lines and hidden runes growing steadily, the völva speaks to you of a deeper, more dangerous concept. She speaks of Grog. You have heard the word before, the great destiny laid down by the Norns, the threads they have already strung on the cosmic loom. It is the unchangeable, the fated. But then she poses a question that chills you more than the damp air of the longhouse. If fate is a thread, she says softly, can it not be respun? This is where the art of the weaver brushes against the greatest of all taboos, meddling with destiny itself. The völva explains that while you cannot change the great events, the birth of a king, the death of a god, you may be able to influence the smaller threads of a personal fate. It is a profound and terrifying idea. It's the difference between predicting the weather and trying to stop the rain. She guides her hand to the taut warp threads, the vertical foundation of the cloak that represents the young warrior's given path. His fate is to go to war. That is his warp. We cannot unstring it. But, she whispers, we can adjust the tension. She shows you how to subtly manipulate the loom weights at the bottom of the warp. By adding a small stone to one weight or replacing another with a slightly lighter one, you can minutely alter the tension of individual threads. To a casual observer, it's just a small adjustment to keep the weave even. Magically, it represents an attempt to make one path of fate tighter and more likely, and another looser and less probable. You tighten the thread that represents a safe return. You loosen the one that represents a fatal wound. It's an act of incredible hubris, a quiet prayer that you hope the Norns are too busy to notice. Then she introduces an even more potent technique. She hands you a small, sharp knife. Sometimes, she says, a thread of fate is woven so poorly it must be cut. She points to a knot in one of the warp threads, a flaw in the spinning that represents a strand of bad luck or a predestined misfortune. Under her guidance, you carefully sever the thread. The tension releases with a soft snap. Then, just as carefully, you tie in a new, stronger thread, one you have personally spun and blessed, splicing it into the warp. This is a powerful and seldom used ritual. One must be certain that the fate being cut is worse than the unknown one that will replace it. It's the mythological equivalent of editing your own Wikipedia page, a bold move that might not stick. This entire concept is at the heart of scholarly debate. Did the Norse truly believe they could alter their grog? Or was this more about managing and accepting it? The popular image of Vikings is one of grim fatalism, of warriors charging into battle, shouting that their doom is already sealed. But practices like these suggest a more complex relationship with destiny. They couldn't control the storm, but they still tried to patch the sail. A fringe belief holds that certain weavers would never look directly at the warp threads, believing that to stare at fate too closely was to challenge it and invite ruin. As you make that tiny cut and tie your hopeful knot, you feel a tremor of awe and fear. You are not just weaving a cloak. You are engaging in a silent, high-stakes negotiation with the universe. Your protection cloak is nearly finished, a dense and powerful testament to your growing skill. Seeing your work, the völva decides you are ready to hear the story of the most legendary piece of Viking Age weaving, a piece of cloth so powerful it was said to command victory itself. She tells you of the Rafinsmerki, the Raven Banner. This was not just a myth. Historical accounts from England and Ireland, like the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle, describe the terror these banners inspired in the enemies of the Vikings. They were real and they were feared. It was not one banner, but many. The völva begins, her voice taking on the cadence of a storyteller by the fire, woven by the daughters of kings and the most powerful of our kind. The legend, she says, is that the banner was woven from plain, undyed linen or silk, a blank canvas for the magic. The weaver would work in a single, frenzied session, from sunrise to sunset, without food or water, pouring all her energy and intent into the cloth. The weaving itself was a ritual of pure focus. The magic was in the raven. Using thread dyed black with soot and charms, the weaver would embroider or weave the image of a raven onto the plain background. But this was no ordinary raven. The true spell, the völva explains, was in its animation. When the banner was brought before a battle, she says, her eyes distant, all would watch the raven. If the banner hung limp and the raven was still, the battle would be lost. The chieftain would not engage. It was an omen, a divination tool used in the most critical of moments. But if a wind should catch the banner, and the raven's wings appeared to beat and flap as if it were alive and ready to fly, victory was assured. The army would advance with the strength of men who knew they could not fail. It's a brilliant piece of psychological warfare. Imagine being a Saxon shieldman, seeing the Viking army across the field, and knowing that they are only attacking because their magic flag told them they were going to win. Their confidence would be terrifying. A quirky detail from the Orkney saga claims that the banner brought victory to the man who carried it, but death to the standard-bearer himself, a truly terrible catch-22. It was both a blessing and a curse, the ultimate sacrifice for the good of the army. It is like being the guy who gets to taste all the food at a five-star restaurant, but you have a fatal allergy to parsley. The völva tells you the deepest secret of the raven banner's creation. The final stitch, the one that gave the raven its eye, was sometimes threaded with a hair from the chieftain's own head, binding his fate directly to the banner. The dye for its beak was occasionally mixed with a single drop of blood from the weaver herself, a sacrifice to awaken the spirit within the cloth. Historians still debate the precise nature of these banners. Were they simple woven tapestries, or were some examples of a more complex embroidery or applique? The textile evidence is sparse, leaving much to the imagination and the vivid descriptions in the sagas. As the völva finishes her tale, you look at the cloak on your loom. It is a powerful object, meant to save one life. The raven banner was a different order of magic entirely, a terrible, beautiful thing, woven to decide the fate of hundreds. Inspired by the legend of the raven banner, you begin to see the cloth on your loom not just as a product, but as a conversation. The völva tells you that a weaver can do more than just send messages out into the world. She can also receive them. She can use the loom for divination, for scrying into the mists of the unknown to seek an answer. This is a subtle art, less about grand pronouncements of victory and more about quiet, personal questions. She has you begin a new piece of cloth, a small, simple square of tabby weave using undyed linen thread. You are not weaving a garment. She instructs. You are weaving a question. As you work, you are to hold a specific query in your mind. Is the coming winter to be harsh? Will the hunting be good this season? Is a newborn child fated for a long life? You focus your thoughts, weaving the inquiry itself into the very fabric. The rhythmic thump-thump of the beater becomes the punctuation of your silent, mental question. When the square is about the size of your hand, the völva stops you. Now, she whispers, you must leave a space for the answer. She shows you how to deliberately create a flaw in the weave, but not a small, hidden one like your first lie. This is a significant, intentional gap. You do this by taking a smooth, flat stick and weaving it into the cloth as if it were a weft thread. You leave it there, and for the next several rows, you weave around it, passing your shuttle above and below the stick, creating a small, open slit in the fabric. This is your portal. This is the empty space where the Norns or the spirits, or the universe can leave their reply. It's like leaving a page blank in your diary for someone else to write in. After creating this opening, you finish the cloth, weaving a few more rows to seal the space before cutting the whole piece from the loom. The result is a small square of linen with a mysterious, deliberate opening near its center. The divination comes from reading this space. The völva takes the cloth and holds it up to the firelight. "Look at the threads around the opening," she murmurs. Do they pull upwards as if in hope? Or do they sag downwards in sorrow? She runs her finger along the edges of the slit. Are they frayed and chaotic, suggesting a difficult path? Or are they smooth and even, promising a clear one? A quirky related practice involved casting small, carved runes onto a freshly woven piece of cloth and divining meaning from where they landed and which symbols were face up. The cloth acted as a sacred space, a V, to contain the chaotic energy of the rune cast. The patterns in your special cloth are a more integrated form of this. Historians still argue whether these divination practices were seen as receiving a definitive, unchangeable answer, or more, as receiving advice on a possible outcome. Was it a forecast or a command? The völva teaches you that the answer is often subtle, a slight puckering of the weave, an unusually thick knot in the thread that appeared near the opening. You have to learn to see the unintentional patterns that form around your intentional emptiness. Staring at the little slit in your woven square, you feel a profound sense of connection. You have asked the world a question in its own language of fiber and tension, and now you must be quiet and wise enough to hear its whispered reply. You have learned to weave protection, to ask questions, to nudge fate. The völva, her face serious, in the firelight, decides you must now be taught the loom's darkest capability. You must understand the shadow weave. Not all magic is for blessing or for insight. Sometimes it is for cursing. This knowledge is not given so you can use it, but so you can recognize it and perhaps defend against it. To know the poison is to know the antidote. She speaks of a legendary and terrifying poem, the Darál Jo from Jarl's saga. In it, 12 Valkyries are seen before a great battle, weaving on a loom made of human entrails for warp threads, severed heads for loom, weights, a sword for a beater, and an arrow for a shuttle. They are not weaving cloth. They are weaving the slaughter that is to come. This epic and gruesome image is the ultimate expression of malicious weaving. While your loom is made of wood and stone, the völva warns that the principles can be grimly replicated. The intent is everything, she says, her voice a low growl. A curse is not woven with happy songs. The galder for a curse is a hiss, a guttural chant of names and misfortunes, spoken with venom. The rhythm of the loom becomes a frenzied, hateful beat. The colors chosen are not the vibrant hues of woad and nadder, but the dull, lifeless colors of decay. You would use thread dyed with rotwood for sickness, or with the soot of a burned home for ruin. The cloth itself would be a coarse, abrasive burlap, woven to chafe and irritate the skin if it were ever worn. The völva shows you how to incorporate symbolic objects directly into the weave. Not hair for binding, but a sharp shard of flint to bring pain, a tangled knot of thorns to create discord, or a feather from a carrion crow to foretell death. These are woven into the fabric, and hidden within its layers, tiny nodes of malice. A truly unsettling folk practice, a fringe belief that lingered for centuries, was to steal a thread from an enemy's garment and weave it into a curse cloth, creating a sympathetic link that the magic could travel along. It's the ancient equivalent of finding someone's password to mess with their social media profile. The patterns in a curse weave are deliberately chaotic. Instead of the stable diagonal of a twill, you would use broken, jarring lines that seem to fight each other. You would create floats and snags, making the fabric weak and prone to tearing, a physical representation of a life falling apart. You would weave runes, but not the protective alges. You would use the thurs, the thorn rune, for pain and strife, perhaps weaving it upside down to amplify its negative power. Historians still debate the social function of such curses. Were they ever actually carried out, or was the mere threat of being the target of a völva's ill will enough to enforce social norms and punish transgressors? The fear of it was a weapon in itself. The völva does not make you weave such an object. She simply describes it, her words painting a picture so vivid you feel a chill crawl up your spine. She concludes by telling you how such a cloth would be used, buried on an enemy's land to poison his crops, secretly slipped into his house to cause sickness, or thrown into the sea to sink his ship. The lesson is sobering. The loom, this tool of creation and warmth, can be turned to an instrument of pure destruction. You understand now that power is neutral. It is the heart of the weaver that makes the cloth a shield or a shroud. Having shown you the highest and lowest applications of your craft, the völva now steps back and asks you to look at the loom itself in a new way. You have seen the threads, she says, gesturing to the entire structure leaning against the wall. Now see the machine that holds them. It is not just a tool. It is a map of the cosmos. It is the great tree Yggdrasil in miniature. You look at the tall wooden frame, and for the first time, you see what she means. The two upright beams are the great pillars that hold up the sky. The top beam, the cloth beam from which the finished textile is rolled, represents Asgard, the realm of the gods, the finished, ordered part of existence. The bottom, where the unwoven warp threads hang tethered by their stone weights, is the realm of chaos and potential, the primordial mists of Niflheim or the fiery depths of Muspelheim. The weaver, you, stand in the middle, in Midgard, the world of mortals. Your job is to transform the chaos from below into the order above, one thread at a time. The warp threads, she continues, running her hand over the vertical curtain of yarn, are the immutable laws of time and space, the branches of Yggdrasil that connect all the realms. This is the grog we spoke of, strung by the Norns at the beginning of all things. This is a powerful, unifying concept found in much of Norse mythology, the idea of a central, connecting axis to the universe. Your loom is a personal, functional model of that cosmic reality. And the weft, she says, holding up your shuttle, is your life, your journey, your soul. As you pass the shuttle back and forth through the warp, you are not just weaving cloth. You are a soul navigating the rigid structures of the cosmos. You are moving through time, making choices, leaving your unique trail across the unchanging framework of reality. Each pass of the shuttle is a day lived. Each thump of the sword beater is a deed done, an experience locked into your personal history. The pattern you create is the story of your existence, woven into the fabric of the world. This cosmological view of the loom is a concept that resonates deeply with the known spiritual beliefs of the Norse. They saw the universe as an interwoven, interconnected system. A quirky but related tidbit is the very word. The Old English and Norse concept of fate is etymologically related to the verb to become, weirwan. Fate wasn't just a static thing. It was an active, ongoing process of becoming, much like a cloth being woven. Historians still argue how literally this cosmological model was taken. Was it a deeply held spiritual belief for every weaver, or a metaphorical framework used by specialists like the völva to teach the deeper mysteries of their craft? You start your next piece of weaving, a simple tunic, but you see it all differently now. Pulling the heddle rod is opening a moment in time. Passing the shuttle is you, living through that moment. Beating the thread into place is the moment becoming a memory, a permanent part of your past. The growing cloth is your life story. told in fiber. The loom is no longer just a machine in the corner of a dark room. It is your personal connection to the structure of everything, a sacred space where you participate directly in the grand, ongoing act of creation. You have woven, with wool and linen, with color and song, with intention and secrecy. Now, the völva tells you, it is time to learn the magic of connection, of binding a piece of cloth so tightly to a person that it becomes a part of them. This requires more than just well wishes and symbols. It requires a piece of the person, themselves. This is the magic of incorporating hair, and SINEW, that your first lesson in this potent art is for a positive binding. A mother wishes for a small, woven charm to protect her child who is leaving to be fostered in another household, a common practice in Viking society. The völva instructs the mother to give you a single lock of her own hair. It's a beautiful, glossy strand of blonde. She also asks for a single hair from the child. You are to twist these two hairs together into a single delicate thread. This is not for strength, but for essence. The völva explains the principle. Hair grows from the head, the seat of thought and memory, she says. It holds a person's spirit within it. By twisting them together, a mother's love and the child's essence are forever entwined. You take this fragile, precious thread of hair and lay it into the shed alongside a normal weft thread of wool. You don't weave it alone. You reinforce it, hiding its power within the strength of the wool. As you beat it into place, you sing a galdr of connection and watchfulness. The resulting charm will be a small, unassuming square of cloth, but locked. Within its heart is a physical link between mother and child, a magical tether that distance cannot break. It's like a spiritual tracking device, powered by love. The darker side of this practice involves animal components. The völva shows you a dried piece of deer sinew, tough and translucent. Sinew binds muscle to bone, she explains. It gives an animal its movement, its strength. Weaving a small piece of sinew into a warrior's garment, like the protection cloak you made, was believed to impart the swiftness of the deer or the strength of the bear from which it was taken. It was a form of sympathetic magic, absorbing the desired quality of the animal. This practice is supported by archaeological finds. While sinew itself rarely survives, the tools used to process it are common, and its use as a super-strong thread for stitching leather and hides is well documented. Using it in weaving would be a natural if symbolic extension. The most unnerving application, of course, was for curses. Just as you could bind two people in love, you could bind a person to misfortune. A quirky but chilling folk belief tells of curses woven using the hair of a dead man, binding the victim to the grave, or using the sinew of a wolf to bring a ravenous, destructive hunger to an enemy's livestock. The use of personal and animal materials makes the magic intensely specific. Historians still debate the prevalence of these practices. Were they common, everyday folk magic, or rare, specialized rituals reserved for the most serious of circumstances? The evidence is, by its very nature, difficult to find. As hair and sinew decay far more readily than wool or linen, you carefully place the hair thread into the small charm, your movements precise and reverent. The act feels incredibly intimate. You are weaving with the very stuff of life, creating a bond that is both physical and mystical. The resulting cloth is no longer just an object. It is a reliquary, holding a sacred connection within its symbol. Weave. It's a powerful reminder that the most potent magic often comes from the most personal of ingredients. A man from the village has been injured, a deep gash on his forearm from a careless slip of a wood axe. The wound has been cleaned, but it needs to be bound to stem the bleeding and ward off infection. The healer has her salves of yarrow and comfrey, but she comes to you for the bandage itself. You are not just to provide a strip of clean linen. You are to weave a healing cloth, a poultice bandage where the magic is as important as the medicine. The völva guides you in this gentle, focused form of your craft. This is not the warrior's magic of deflection, she says softly. This is the mother's magic of mending. You choose your materials with extreme care. Not wool, which is coarse and holds dirt, but the finest, softest linen you can. Spin. Linen, a product of the flax plant, was known even then for its cleanliness and absorbency, making it the ideal choice for medical use. A historical fact. It demonstrates their practical understanding of hygiene. You spin the thread as thinly as you can, praying for it not to break. The dye you choose is not for power, but for purification. You use a dye made from onion skins, which creates a soft, sunny yellow. The völva explains that yellow is the color of the sun, of warmth, of life returning. But there is a practical magic to it as well. A quirky tidbit of folk medicine is that the compounds in onion skins have mild antiseptic and anti-inflammatory properties. The dye itself was a form of medicine. Soaking the linen in this golden bath is your first act of healing. As you set up the small loom for this task, you sing a different kind of galder. It's not a booming chant or a whispered secret, but a low, soothing hum, almost a lullaby. The rhythm of the loom is slow, gentle, deliberate. Thump, thump, thump. Each beat is a wish for skin to knit together, for swelling to recede, for fever to break. Your intent is not to shape fate, but to encourage the natural processes of the body to do their work. You are weaving a plea for wholeness. Into the soft yellow linen, you weave specific runes. The most important is Birkenan, the rune of the birch tree, symbolizing new beginnings, growth, and healing. You also weave Yoruz, the rune of the wild ox, not for its wildness, but for its raw strength and vitality, a prayer for the man's life force to return. These are not hidden as they were in the cloak. You weave them with a slightly darker yellow thread, making them visible. They are meant to be seen by the patient, to give him hope and a focus for his own healing energies. They are a message, directly to his spirit. Historians still debate the relationship between folk medicine and magic in the Viking Age. Were they seen as two separate things, or was a healing charm considered just as vital as a herbal poultice? The evidence suggests they were two sides of the same coin. The physical and spiritual were inextricably linked. A doctor might set a bone, but a Vivian charm would ensure it healed straight and strong. As you cut the finished bandage from the loom, it feels warm and soft in your hands. It is more than just a piece of cloth. It is a vessel for your hope, a focused application of your will to mend what is broken. You hand it to the healer, knowing your work and hers are about to be woven together. Before you can undertake your next great weaving, a task the völva has hinted will be your most challenging, yet she tells you that the weaver must be as pure as the magic she intends to work. You cannot weave a clean cloth with dirty hands, she says, her gaze intense. And you cannot weave a clear spell with a cluttered soul. Your next lesson is not about technique, but about preparation. It is about the rituals of purity and focus that must precede any significant magical working. The first ritual is fasting. For the day before you are to begin the new project, you are to consume nothing but clear water. This is not a punishment. The völva explains that an empty stomach quiets the body and sharpens the mind. Physical hunger creates a different kind of spiritual hunger, a yearning that you can channel into the loom. It detaches you from the mundane needs of the flesh and opens you to the more subtle currents of the spirit world. It's a practice found in countless spiritual traditions around the world, from desert hermits to mountain monks. The Vikings, it seems, understood that a rumbling stomach could be a powerful spiritual megaphone. The second ritual is bathing. On the morning you are to begin, you are taken to a nearby stream, the water so cold it steals your breath. This is not about hygiene in the modern sense. It's about ritual purification. As you submerge yourself in the icy water, you are to visualize all your anxieties, your petty frustrations, your distracting thoughts being washed away downstream. You are to emerge from the water feeling scoured, new, and utterly present. A quirky historical tidbit is the Viking reputation for cleanliness. Compared to many of their European contemporaries, the Norse were said to bathe frequently, at least once a week on their designated washing day, Lagadagur, which became our Saturday. For a magical working, this cleansing would be even more profound. The final preparation is one of isolation and focus. After your fast and your bath, you are not to speak to anyone. You retreat to the corner of the longhouse where the loom stands, and you sit in silence for a full hour before you touch a single thread. You are to quiet your mind, to meditate on the purpose of the cloth you are about to create. You stare at the empty warp, the blank page, and you fill it with your intention before a single thread is ever passed. You build the entire garment. In your mind, feeling its texture, seeing its color, knowing its power. Historians still debate the extent to which these formal rituals were practiced. Were they reserved for only the most elite völvas and the most important of magical weavings, like a royal banner? Or did every woman engage in a simpler version, perhaps a moment of quiet focus or a quick prayer before starting a new project? It's likely the truth lies somewhere in the middle, a spectrum of ritual depending on the gravity of the task. As you sit in the humming silence, your body light from the fast and your skin tingling from the cold water, you feel a profound sense of clarity. The distractions of the world have fallen away. There is only you, the loom, and the great work. That awaits. The magic has already begun, not in the thread, but within you. Your focus is sharp, your spirit clean. The völva decides you are ready for a piece of magic that steps away from the loom, but holds to its core principles. She is teaching you the secret of the wind knots, a specialized form of fiber magic, crucial to a seafaring people. A group of fishermen are preparing for a long and dangerous journey into the North Sea, and they have come for a blessing. You will not weave them a sail, but you will give them a wind they can carry in their pocket. You start not with wool or linen, but with a length of good, strong rope made from twisted hemp. The völva hands you a piece about the length of your arm. The sea is chaos, she says, but the wind is a thread. It can be guided. The principle is simple, yet profound. You will tie a series of specific knots into this rope, and into each knot you will trap a wind summoned by a galder. Follow her instructions precisely. The first knot is large and complex, a looping pattern that looks like a coiled serpent. As you pull it tight, you begin a low, whistling chant. It's not a song of words, but an imitation of a gentle breeze rustling through the leaves of a tall birch tree. You pour the idea of a soft, steady, favorable wind into the knot. You feel the rope resist, then yield, and as you pull the knot completely tight, you feel a strange sense of containment, as if you've captured a fluttering bird in your hands. This is the wind the sailors will untie when they are becalmed. Prepare for a gentle push to get them home. The second knot is different. It is tighter, smaller, a series of sharp, angular twists. The galder for this one is a more forceful chant, the sound of a strong gust blowing through a mountain pass. This is the knot for a stronger wind, a workhorse wind to fill the sail and speed them on their journey when they are in open, safe waters. You have to put your weight into it to pull this one tight, your knuckles white with effort. The magic feels more aggressive, more commanding. The third and final knot is one you tie with a sense of dread. The völva warns you that this knot holds a storm. The chant for it is a howl, a raw, powerful cry that mimics a gale screaming over the waves. Your fingers fumble as you twist the rope into a chaotic, ugly tangle. As you tighten it, You channel all your focus into containing this destructive force. This knot is not meant to be untied. It is a last resort, a desperate measure to be unleashed only if they are being pursued by pirates or trapped by an enemy, a storm to be thrown into the face of their foes. It is a curse and a blessing, tied into one. This practice of selling wind to sailors is a surprisingly persistent piece of folklore, found in tales from Finland to Scotland well into the 18th century, suggesting a deep-rooted ancient belief. Historians still argue whether this was pure superstition or if it had a practical psychological basis. Did the sailors, believing they had control over the wind, sail with more confidence and make bolder, more successful choices? A quirky fringe theory suggests that the magic was in the knot itself, that a sailor who knew how to untie these complex, specific knots was likely an experienced mariner who also knew how to read the real weather patterns. The rope of knots was a testament to his skill. You hand the finished rope to the lead fisherman. It feels strangely inert in his hands, but you know it holds 3 sleeping winds, waiting for a sailor's command to awaken. Up until now, your work at the loom has been a solitary practice, a quiet communion between you, the völva, and the threads of fate. But the völva tells you that some magic is too vast for one person to weave alone. Sometimes power must be gathered. She leads you to the center of the longhouse, where your loom has been moved. Next to it, 2 other looms have been set up, and 2 other women, both skilled weavers you recognize from the village, are waiting. They greet you with a silent, knowing nod. Tonight, you will work as a weaving circle. The energy in the room is immediately different. The air, usually thick, with the solitary hum of one loom, now feels charged with a collective, expectant silence. The central fire pit casts long, dancing shadows of the 3 looms against the walls, making them look like a forest of threads. The task is to create 3 identical blankets for 3 sisters who are all to be married on the same day. The blankets are not for protection or for healing, but for fertility and household prosperity, a blessing on their new lives. You all begin your work in unison. The völva doesn't stand over you and instruct. She sits by the fire, a quiet, grounding presence. The 3 of you warp your looms with the same yarn, a soft wool dyed a deep green with nettles, for growth, and a rich gold with weld, for wealth and success. The act of measuring the warp threads together, of tying the loom weights in tandem, creates an instant, unspoken rhythm. It's like being part of a well-rehearsed dance. When the weaving begins, something truly magical happens. One woman starts to sing a galder, a soft, melodic chant for abundance. Gold thread woven, grain to grow, green thread woven, babes to know. After a few lines, the second weaver picks up the song, her voice harmonizing with the first. Then, you join in, your voice finding its place in the chorus. The 3 looms, the 3 sword beaters, fall into a shared rhythm. Thump, thump, thump. The sound is no longer 3 individual beats, but a single, powerful, resonant heartbeat that fills the entire longhouse. This is the true power of the weaving circle. Your individual intentions for luck, for children, for a happy home, are no longer separate streams of thought. They merge, amplified and reinforced by the shared song and the synchronized movements. The magic you are creating is layered, interwoven, and immensely powerful. Historically, weaving was often a communal activity. Women would gather to work, sharing stories, songs, and skills. This social aspect was vital for passing on complex patterns and techniques. It's only natural that this communal spirit would extend to the magical side of the craft. A quirky sociological observation is that such group rituals build immense social cohesion. You are not just weaving blankets. You are weaving your community, together, reinforcing bonds of friendship and mutual support. Historians still debate the formal structure of these circles. Were they spontaneous gatherings, or organized guilds with clear hierarchies and secret knowledge, much like the later medieval guilds? As you weave, surrounded by the focused energy of the other women, you feel an incredible sense of belonging and power. The blankets growing on the looms seem to glow with a warmth that has nothing to do with the fire. It is the warmth of 3 hearts, 3 voices, 3 wills, all woven together into a single potent blessing. The time has finally come. All your lessons, from the spinning of the thread to the singing of the galder, from the solo ritual to the communal circle, have been leading to this. The chieftain of your village has commissioned a new longship, the finest his people have ever built. He has come to the völva not for a banner, but for the ship's soul, its sail. This will be your masterpiece, the culmination of all your training. The task is immense, the responsibility overwhelming. This is a historical reality. A Viking Age longship sail was a colossal object, often over 100 square meters, requiring an estimated 2 tons of raw wool and representing years of labor for a single household. It was quite literally one of the most valuable objects a community could produce. For this project, the entire weaving circle is reassembled, but you have been designated the lead weaver. The final choices, the core of the magic, will be yours. Begin by selecting the wool from 24 different sheep, blending the tough, weather-resistant tog and the warm, dense thell for the perfect balance of strength and flexibility. The wool is dyed in strips of bold color, the deep red of madder for courage, and the dark blue of woad for the protection of the sea gods. When woven, these strips will form a formidable pattern, a visible declaration of your village's wealth and power. You and the other women sing for weeks as you spin the mountain of wool into yarn, each thread a prayer for a safe voyage. The loom itself is a specially constructed giant, so wide it takes 2 of you to pass the shuttle. The weaving is slow, heavy work. The sword beater is a massive plank of oak that you must slam into place with the full weight of your body. The thump echoes through the village like a drumbeat, announcing the ship's impending birth. The pattern you choose is a reinforced diamond twill, a design known for its strength and resistance to stretching. Magically, the diamond shape represents a watchful eye, a ward against the hidden dangers of the deep. Into this vast expanse of wool, you pour every secret you have learned. You weave in hidden algae's runes along the edges for protection. At the 4 corners of the sail, you secretly weave in a small twist of hemp from the windknot's rope, a plea for mastery over the gales. The chieftain gives you a single hair from his own head, which you tie into the central seam, binding his luck to the fate of the ship. A quirky but powerful addition is a thread spun from the wool of a sheep that was struck by lightning and survived. This lightning wool was considered immensely powerful, a charm to appease Thor, the god of thunder, and persuade him to spare the ship his wrath. Historians still argue about the decoration on sails. While the iconic striped pattern is well documented, some sagas mention sails adorned with dragons or other beasts. Was this woven into the fabric, painted on, or sewn on as applique? The evidence is inconclusive. As you work, you feel the immense pressure. This sail will carry dozens of men across the treacherous northern seas. It must hold against storms that can tear oak trees from the earth. It is a shield, an engine, and a flag all in one. Weeks turn into months. The sail grows, a magnificent creature of wool and magic, until at last the final thread is beaten into place. It hangs from the loom, a testament to the collective will of your people, and to the quiet, formidable power of your craft. The great sail is finished. It hangs from the colossal loom, a magnificent wall of red and blue, humming with the captured energy of months of labor, song, and focused will. The air in the longhouse is thick with a sense of accomplishment and sacred tension. But the work is not yet done. The völva tells you that the final act is one of the most crucial, cutting the cloth from the loom. This is the moment the magic is sealed, the spell locked into its vessel forever. It is the spiritual equivalent of hitting save on a document. You can never edit again. This is not a task to be rushed with any old knife. The chieftain himself presents you with a ceremonial blade, an ottery, with a handle of polished walrus ivory and a blade of sharpened bronze that glints in the firelight. It has never been used for any other purpose. This moment is a ritual, a birth. The entire village seems to be holding its breath. The men who will sail under this cloth stand silently at the back of the longhouse, their faces filled with awe. Before the first cut, a ritual of appeasement must be made. You are severing the threads of the loom, the connection between the ordered cloth and the raw potential of the warp. The völva explains that this can be a violent act if not handled with respect. You and the other weavers make an offering. A bowl of the finest cream is poured out onto the earth near the base of the loom, a gift to the land spirits. A libation of mead is offered to Odin and the Norns, a thank you for their passive allowance of your work. A quirky folk belief insisted that a small piece of silver must be left tangled in the leftover warp threads, a payment to the loom's own spirit for its long service. Then you take your position. You will not cut along the top near the cloth beam. You will cut the warp threads at the bottom, just above the heavy stone weights. This is symbolic. You are not just harvesting the cloth. You are freeing it from the primal forces that held it in tension. You take the ceremonial knife. Your hand is steady. You begin at one edge. Instead of a gouger, there is only a profound silence. You slice through the first bundle of taut threads. They part with a sound like a great collective sigh, a release of stored energy. The heavy loom weight falls to the earthen floor with a soft thud. One by one, you move along the line, cutting the threads. Snap, thud, snap, thud. The sound is both mournful and triumphant. With each cut, the great sail slumps slightly, its weight transferring from the loom to the hands of the chieftain's men, who step forward to catch it. They hold the magnificent cloth, their faces a mixture of reverence and pride. Historians still debate the specific rituals surrounding the completion of major textile projects. The sagas are often silent on these domestic details, but the sheer value and labor involved suggests that the moment of completion must have been marked with significant ceremony. When the last thread is cut, the sail is free. It is no longer a part of the loom, a work in progress. It is its own entity now, a creature of wind and wool, ready for the sea. The leftover warp threads, the thrum, hang from the loom like a ragged fringe. They too are considered potent and are saved for use in smaller, personal charms. You look at the massive sail, now held aloft by the sailors. You have not just created an object. You have given birth to a spirit, and now you must let it go, trusting in the strength of the threads and the power of the songs you locked within. Years pass. You have become a master of your craft, your hands as familiar with the loom as they are with your own face. The rhythms of weaving are the rhythms of your life. But a new thread is being introduced into the tapestry of your world, a thread from the south, spun with a different faith. It is the thread of the cross. Missionaries arrive, men in simple, dark robes, speaking of a single, all-powerful God, a compassionate Son, and a Holy Spirit. At first, it seems a curiosity. This new God is one of peace and forgiveness, concepts that sit awkwardly alongside the warrior ethos of Odin and Thor. Some people are drawn to the message of hope, the promise of a heaven that isn't reserved only for those who die in battle. The chieftain, a pragmatic man, sees political and trade advantages in converting. A new king in a neighboring land has adopted the faith, and alliances are easier when you share a God. The change is slow, but it is relentless. A small wooden church is built at the edge of the village, its stark, vertical lines a strange contrast to the long, low curve of the great hall. The new priest, a sincere but stern man named Brother Aidan, speaks of superstition and pagan folly. He sees the völva not as a wise woman, but as a witch in league with demons. He hears the Galdr sung at the loom, not as a song of blessing, but as a devilish incantation. The cross and the distaff, the symbol of your new faith and the ancient, tool of women's work, begin to exist in a state of quiet tension. You see the shift in subtle ways. A woman comes to you for a healing cloth, but asks you in a whisper not to weave in the old runes, but to instead try and weave the shape of the new cross. A young man going to sea still wants a charm, but he asks for 3 knots instead of a wind-rope one for the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. The old magic is not being erased, but it is being reinterpreted, forced to wear the clothes of the new religion. It's a historical process known as syncretism, where old beliefs merge and blend with new ones. The Yule festival, with its logs and evergreen branches, doesn't vanish. It slowly transforms into Christmas. A quirky but telling detail is found in the archaeological record. In some late Viking Age graves, you find both a Thor's hammer amulet and a crucifix buried together on the same person. It's the ultimate spiritual hedge bedding. Why not have the protection of all the gods available? It's like having both a top-of-the-line security system and a very large, loud dog. Historians still debate how quickly and completely the populace converted. Was it a sudden, top-down change enforced by kings, or a gradual, generations-long process of cultural assimilation? The völva grows quieter, more withdrawn. The open practice of seer becomes dangerous. The fear is no longer of a rival's curse, but of the priest's condemnation. The shadow of suspicion falls over your loom. The rhythmic thump-thump that was once the heartbeat of the household now sounds, to some ears, like a pagan drum. You feel a profound sense of loss, a chilling of the spirit. The world is changing, and the ancient, intricate language of the threads is being declared a heresy. You must now learn a new skill. How to hide. The open celebration of your craft is no longer possible. The priest's sermons grow bolder, denouncing the old ways as foolishness at best and demonic witchcraft at worst. To be seen chanting over a loom or purposefully weaving a rune is to invite suspicion, ostracism, or even accusation. The völva, now a very old woman, tells you that the magic cannot die, but it must go into hiding. It must learn to speak in a code that the new faith cannot decipher. You must drive the magic underground. Your work changes. The bold, obvious symbols are the first to go. You no longer weave the Voknut or Thor's hammer. The Alges rune, once a proud declaration of protection, is too risky. Instead, you learn to disguise the magic in plain sight, concealing it within seemingly innocent decorative patterns. The art of the weaver becomes an art of deception. The protective power of the Alges rune, with its splayed, upright shape, is hidden within a complex pattern of interlocking diamonds or a stylized tree motif. To the priest, it is a simple geometric border. To you, and to the person who will wear the garment, it is a forest of hidden wards. The sinuous flowing power of Jarmungandr, the world serpent, is transformed into an elegant, looping interlace pattern along the hem of a tunic. It looks like the Celtic knotwork that the monks themselves favor in their illuminated manuscripts, a perfect camouflage. It's like hiding your secret diary on the same shelf as your tax returns. Nobody is ever going to look for it. Their dot, even the colors take on a double meaning. Red is no longer just for a warrior's spirit. It is now also for the blood of the martyrs. Blue is not only for the wisdom of the sea, but for the robes of the Virgin Mary. You use the same dyes, the same materials, but you learn to speak two languages at once, one for the new world and one for the old heart. This is a historical reality, seen in folk art all over the world, where pagan symbols survive for centuries, disguised as simple floral or geometric designs. A quirky but poignant example of this is the witch's foot, a disguised pentagram scratched onto fireplaces or doorways to ward off evil. In weaving, a similar five-petaled flower or a star-shaped pattern could serve the same purpose, appearing as nothing more than a cheerful, rustic decoration. You become a master of plausible deniability. If ever questioned, you can honestly say you are just weaving a pretty pattern of flowers and vines. You are not lying, but you are not telling the whole truth. Historians still debate how much of this hidden symbolism was a conscious act of resistance versus a gradual, unconscious blending of artistic traditions. Did the weaver purposefully hide the rune, or did the rune's shape simply evolve into a more decorative, abstract form over time? Standing at your loom, you know the truth is that it's both. The magic is adapting to survive. You weave a baptismal gown for a newborn child, the fabric a pure, undyed white. But in the texture of the weave itself, you create a subtle herringbone pattern, the V-shape a faint echo of the Valknut, a silent prayer that the old gods and the new will both watch over this child. The magic is quieter now, a whisper instead of a song, but it is still there, living in the spaces between the threads. The world continues to turn. The longhouse gives way to timber-framed houses with stone foundations. The open hearth is replaced by a fireplace and chimney. The völva has long since passed into the earth, and you are now the old woman, your knuckles gnarled, your eyes clouded with age. The great warp-weighted loom, once the center of your world, is now seen as an old-fashioned, inefficient tool, slowly being replaced by the smaller, faster horizontal treadle loom introduced from the south. The old ways are not just hidden, they are being forgotten. You sit in the quiet of your home, and you reflect on what will remain. When your time is done, when the songs are no longer sung, and the secret meanings of the patterns are lost, what will the earth remember? What physical evidence will survive for future generations to puzzle over? You think of the things that will endure the long sleep in the soil. The wood of the loom will rot away. The wool and linen, even the magnificent sail, will turn to dust, surviving only in rare waterlogged conditions or as faint impressions in metal corrosion. But some things will last. The loom waits. You pick one up, a heavy donut-shaped stone that once held a thread of fate taut. It feels cool and solid in your palm. These will be found by people centuries from now, scattered in the dirt where a longhouse once stood. Archaeologists will dig them up from the graves of women, arranged in a neat row at their feet, a silent testament to the loom that was buried with them. This is a historical fact. These weights are one of the most common and enduring pieces of evidence for Viking Age weaving. The scholars of the future will find them and catalog them. They will weigh them and measure them. They will write papers about them. They will correctly identify them as tools for weaving. But you wonder, will they feel the echo of the Galdr that was sung over them? Will they understand that they were not just weights, but anchors for spells, the cold, hard currency of destiny? You also think of the smaller, more personal items. The whalebone sword beater, polished smooth by your hand, might survive in the anaerobic mud of a riverbed. So might the bronze and iron brooch that held the cloaks you wove. A quirky but fascinating archaeological reality is that tiny, fragmentary pieces of textiles are often preserved. When they are pressed against a metal object as it corrodes, the metal salts essentially fossilize the fibers. Future scientists will analyze these minuscule fragments, these ghosts of cloth, under powerful microscopes. They will identify the type of wool, the style of weave, the chemical signature of the dyes. They will marvel at the skill and complexity of your work. Historians will still argue, of course. They will debate the function of the patterns, attributing them to regional styles or trade influences. They will see a complex weave and call it a status symbol. They will see a hidden flaw and call it a mistake. They will see the evidence of your life's work, but will they understand its soul? As you sit with the heavy loom weight in your lap, a strange sense of peace settles over you. Perhaps it doesn't matter if they understand everything. The earth will remember. It will keep these small, hard secrets, the stones, the bone tools, the metal-stained threads, as proof that you are here. And for those with the wisdom to listen, the stones will still hum with a very old song. The fire in your hearth crackles, casting a warm, gentle light on your wrinkled hands. The world outside is now a place of church bells and market charters, a world that believes it has left the age of magic far behind. Yet you see the ghosts of your craft everywhere, living on in the stories told to children as they are tucked into bed. The magic of the loom was too powerful to vanish completely. It didn't die, it shape-shifted. It bled into folklore and fairy. Tales. You hear a mother telling her daughter the story of a girl forced to spin straw into gold for a greedy king. The tale is called Rumpelstiltskin. The mother tells it as a clever fable about the perils of boasting, but you hear the echo of a deeper truth. You hear the memory of the alchemical power of the spindle and the dye pot, the way you could take the straw of raw, greasy wool and transform it into the gold of a richly dyed, valuable textile. The little imp with the secret name is the memory of the Galder, the secret word of power that animates the magic. Another evening, you overhear a different story, that of a princess who pricks her finger on a cursed spindle and falls into an enchanted sleep for 100 years. The storytellers frame it as a warning against curiosity, but you know its true origin. You see the spindle not just as a tool, but as a vector of power capable of carrying a potent curse. The story of Sleeping Beauty is a dim memory of the shadow weave of the Veviva's warning about malice being spun into a thread. The prick of the finger is the moment the magic is delivered, the point of contact between the enchanted object and its victim. This is a historical pattern. As old religions are suppressed, their gods and rituals often get demoted to the status of fairy tale characters, witches and magical creatures. You smile when you hear the tale of the 12 dancing princesses, whose shoes are mysteriously worn out each morning. In some older versions of the story, their secret is discovered by a soldier who has a cloak of invisibility. You remember the protection cloak you wove so long ago, with its patterns of misdirection, and its charms for going unseen. The magical cloak, a staple of fantasy and folklore, is a direct descendant of the real Vararfelder, the spell-woven garments of your youth. A quirky but widespread folktale motif is that of the wild swans, where a princess must weave shirts of stinging nettles to save her brothers who have been turned into birds. The pain she endures while gathering and weaving the nettles is a key part of the magic. You recognize this immediately. It is the memory of ritual purity of the sacrifice and personal suffering required to power a great working. It echoes the fasting, the icy baths, the pain and focus needed to make the magic real. Historians and folklorists will one day trace these motifs, debating their origins and psychological significance. They will talk about archetypes and shared cultural narratives. But you know the secret. These stories are the graveyard and the nursery of your craft. They are where the old ways have gone to sleep, waiting to be reawakened. The loom may be gone, the Viviva's chants may be silent, but the essential magic that a thread can carry a destiny, that a cloth can hold a spell, that a weaver can shape the world lives on, hidden in plain sight in the language of once upon a time. You are the old woman now, the crone at the hearth. Your hands, once smooth and clumsy, are a roadmap of your life's work, the knuckles swollen, the skin as thin and soft as well-worn linen. You've seen the world change, seen the old gods retreat into the hills, and the new one take their seat in stone churches. You watched the magic of your loom go into hiding, disguising itself in the threads of fairy tales, a whisper of its former power. The great warp-weighted looms are mostly gone, replaced by the quicker, clattering horizontal looms that prioritize speed over spirit. It is a faster world, a louder world, and one with little time for the slow, deliberate magic, you know. A young girl, your great-granddaughter, sits by the fire, watching you spin. Her eyes are wide with a familiar curiosity. She is not watching a chore. She is watching a mystery. She sees how you hum a quiet, tuneless melody as you work, a song so old you no longer remember the words, only the feeling. Grandmother, she asks, her voice small, why does the thread look like it's dancing? You stop spinning. You look at her, and in her face you see your own, so many winters ago, standing in the shadows of the longhouse, smelling the smoke and the wool. You see the beginning of the cycle. You beckon her closer. From a small wooden box, you take out a tool you have not used in years. It is a shuttle, carved from you, polished to a deep, dark sheen by the oils of your hand. It is the very one, the völva first placed in your palm. This, you say, your voice a dry rustle of leaves, is a messenger. You place it in her small, soft hand. It looks impossibly large. It carries a story from one side of the world to the other. You explain to her, in simple terms, how a thread can be more than a thread, how a pattern can be more than a pattern. You are not teaching her seer or gelder. You are planting a seed. You are telling her that some weaving patterns are family secrets, passed from mother to daughter, and that they hold the luck of your lineage. This was a common practice, a way for families to maintain a unique identity and a thread of tradition. Through their textiles, you are starting her journey, just as yours was started. Folklorists and historians still debate whether these secret family traditions were genuine survivals of pagan magic, or simply the romanticized invention of later generations looking back on a lost age. But as the girl's fingers trace the smooth wood of the shuttle, you know that the distinction is meaningless. The power was never just in the rune or the chant. It was in the belief. It was in the passing of knowledge, the sacred trust between one generation and the next. The girl looks from the shuttle to the thread, to you, and in her eyes, a tiny spark of understanding ignites. The cycle will continue. The magic is not dead dot, and so the final thread is woven into our tale for tonight. Let the images of the loom and the longhouse begin to soften now, the sharp details blurring at the edges as if kissed by a gentle fog. The rhythmic thump of the sword beater, which has echoed through our story, can fade away, replaced by the quiet and steady beating of your own heart. All the secrets of the völva, the courage of the warrior's cloak, and the hopes woven into a chieftain's sail can rest now, tucked away safely in the deep, quiet archives of the night. There is nothing more to learn, nothing more to do, but to let the gentle weight of the story settle over you like a warm, heavy blanket. Let your thoughts drift and fray, separating into the soft, unspun fibers of dream. The old woman has passed on her knowledge. The cycle is complete, and now there is only the peaceful, unbroken stillness of the dark, waiting to hold you as you drift into a deep and restful sleep.